There was a time when everyone loved Plymouth cars. Not only did they enter a niche dominated by giant companies like Ford and Chevrolet, but their first car, the Model Q, became the third best-selling car in America at the time. To make matters even more interesting, Chrysler's car company was barely 4 years old. And as the story goes, his friend Henry Ford warned him to stay out of the category, telling him, "Walter, you'll go broke." But despite all these obstacles, only 3 years after its creation, the Plymouth brand became so successful that it almost surpassed Ford as the second most popular car manufacturer in the United States. Walter P. Chrysler even got featured as the Man of the Year on the cover of Time magazine 1 year after creating the Plymouth brand. And it was mostly because of the success Chrysler's new division had against huge brands like Ford and Chevy. Yet, in spite of all this amazing success in a highly competitive market, something happened along the way with Chrysler's new brand. From a company that managed to gain the trust of millions of Americans in just a few years, Plymouth cars easily but surely faded away. In the summer of 1928, Walter Chrysler already had plenty of work on his desk, launching the DeSoto brand and acquiring the Dodge Brothers Company in a massive stock swap valued at $170 million. A little more than a year in the future was the Wall Street crash, followed by the USA's plunge into its deepest economic depression in history. Despite all of this, Walter P. Chrysler decided to take his swing at the low-priced car market segment. And on July 7, 1928, Chrysler introduced the first Plymouth car, the Model Q, at Madison Square Garden. Originally, the Model Q was marketed as Chrysler's Plymouth, and the low-priced car was sold through Chrysler franchises, forming the Chrysler-Plymouth dealer alignment that continued for decades. The Model Q cost a bit more than other cars, listed at $675, but Chrysler made sure buyers got a little more, offering a longer wheelbase and advanced features like full-pressure engine lubrication and four-wheel hydraulic brakes. However, the 1928 Model Q was short-lived, ending production just 1 year later in 1929, despite becoming the third best-selling car in the United States, with over 65,000 units manufactured and sold. In 1929, 3 big changes happened, shaping Plymouth's identity today. First, in February of 1929, the Model Q was replaced by the improved Model U. Second, Plymouth introduces its first logo, featuring a rear view of the Mayflower ship, symbolizing the English Puritans' arrival at Plymouth Rock in Massachusetts. Third, the Chrysler name was dropped, leaving Plymouth as a standalone company. The inspiration for the Plymouth brand name came from Plymouth binder twine, produced by the Plymouth Cordage Company, also of Plymouth. The name was chosen by Joe Frazier due to the popularity of the twine among farmers. Joe Frazier pitched the idea to Walter P. Chrysler, who wanted a popular name for Chrysler's new division, something that people all over America would recognize instantly. Walter loved the name, and so the Plymouth name stuck. The Great Depression played a significant role in reorganizing national and international business and completely changed consumers' needs and wants. While people were looking to spend their money on luxurious things and fast, fancy cars during the Roaring '20s, they quickly shifted their focus to more affordable and economical vehicles when the winds changed. This couldn't have come at a better time for Chrysler. During an era when many car companies, including Barley Motor Car, Durant Motors, Little Mac, Duesenberg, Graham, Hopp, and many others failed, Plymouth played a vital role in keeping the Chrysler Corporation alive. In fact, starting with the 1930s, Plymouth cars were sold by all 3 Chrysler divisions: Chrysler, DeSoto, and Dodge. It was a tough time for most car manufacturers, but Plymouth cars thrived, rising to the 3rd spot in sales among all cars. And it was mostly due to one particular model, the Standard 6 model. This model was shipped worldwide and stayed in production for over 25 years, from 1933 to 1959. By 1939, Plymouth had sold over 400,000 vehicles in just 1 year, and by 1957, that number soared to over 700,000 vehicles for that model year. Despite Plymouth's incredible success during the Great Depression, their most popular and appreciated models were yet to come. In 1956, Plymouth introduced the Fury, a standout model within the Belvedere series that featured a distinctive gold anodized trim, exclusively available in eggshell white, and limited to the two-door hardtop. Technically, the Fury was Plymouth's first ever muscle car, but it was just introduced to the market in an era when it hadn't yet realized its fascination and craze for muscle cars. The Fury continued to be a special, high-end car until 1959, when it replaced the Belvedere as the Deluxe series, available in hardtop, convertible, and sedan body styles. The 1957 and 1958 Furies were painted in buckskin beige, replacing eggshell white as the only available exterior color. In 1957, the Plymouth division produced cars with an advanced styling compared to Chevrolet or Ford. However, the 1957 and 1958 models suffered from poor materials, spotty build quality, and inadequate corrosion protection. They were rust-prone and greatly damaged Chrysler's reputation. Yet, the tipping point of Plymouth's success was still on the horizon, with the release of some of their finest cars between 1960 and 1970. Things started to decline just a bit by the 1960s. Chrysler decided to downsize their standard Plymouth model in 1962, which turned out to be a mistake as the competition did not do the same, and the consumers wanted bigger cars during this time. Some of the bigger name Plymouth vehicles during the 1960s and 1970s would include the Roadrunner, Sport Fury, Barracuda, GT, GTX, Belvedere Sport Satellite, Superbird, and Duster 340. 1973 marked Plymouth's peak in sales with almost 1 million vehicles sold. The 1970s also introduced the iconic Barracuda and Cuda E body muscle cars. Sadly, their run ended in 1974 due to changes in the world, like increased safety rules, emissions regulations, higher gas prices, and economic struggles. The Voyager was also on Car and Driver magazine's 10 Best list for 1985. By the 70s, Chrysler had started repositioning Dodge as an alternative to Plymouth, reducing the price between the two and offering very similar compact vehicles under both names. This really began the demise of Plymouth, as Dodge was outselling them. By 1982, the decline continued, and by 1990, Plymouth had no unique products of their own, as everything they sold was a rebadged version of another Chrysler vehicle, mostly Dodges and Eagles. From here on, most Plymouth cars were rebadged versions of Dodge or Mitsubishi models, including the Valere, Valiant, and Acclaim. One big hit was the rebadged Plymouth version of Chrysler's new minivan from 1974 to 1983. During the 90s, Chrysler tried to sway the tide in their favor by repositioning Plymouth to its traditional target market as the automaker's entry-level brand. This effort included giving Plymouth its own new sailboat logo and creating TV commercials and newspaper ads that focused solely on value. However, this only further narrowed Plymouth's product offerings and buyer appeal, and sales continued to drop massively. By the late 1990s, only 4 vehicles were sold under the Plymouth name: the Grand Voyager minivans, the Breeze midsize sedan, the Neon compact car, and the Prowler sports car, which was to be the last model unique to Plymouth. After discontinuing the Eagle brand in 1998, Chrysler was planning to expand the Plymouth line with a number of unique models. The first model was the Plymouth Prowler. The PT Cruiser was to have been the second. Both models had similar front-end styling, suggesting Chrysler intended a retro-styling theme for the Plymouth brand. At the time of Daimler's takeover of Chrysler, on May 7, 1998, Plymouth had no models of its own beside the Prowler. From a peak production of almost 1 million for the 1973 model year, Plymouth rarely exceeded 200,000 cars per year after 1990. Plymouth owned the number 3 spot in sales all through the 30s, the 40s, and much of the 50s, then regained it briefly in the 70s. But by then, the US new car market was shattering into multiple segments, and the low-price 3 no longer ruled the top of the sales charts. It's fair to say that everything went downhill with Chrysler's merger with Daimler-Benz AG. Chrysler was the one trying to revive their nostalgic brand, but Daimler couldn't care less, and they looked to the numbers for an easy decision. After being around for 73 years, from 1928 to 2001, the Plymouth brand had officially died. Despite having loyal fans and some positive aspects, they lacked the corporate sponsorship and desire to keep the brand alive. The same thing would happen to other brands such as Oldsmobile, Pontiac, and Mercury. In the end, it wasn't a financially destructive decision, but it did hurt many emotionally.